Do you know what real loneliness is? I'm not talking about that fleeting ache when a friend cancels plans or the silence after a busy day. Real loneliness, the kind that settles into your bones and refuses to leave. Imagine waking up in a small apartment. No footsteps, no voices. The kettle boils not because someone made you tea, but because you did it again. Alone. And when you fall, there's no one there to catch you. When you're sick, no one notices, no one comes. And this is the tragic reality for millions of elderly people around the world. And it's one we need to talk about seriously, honestly, and with urgency. And it raises a painful but necessary question. What happens to an elderly person when no one is left to care for them? When the calls stop coming, when friends have passed, when children have drifted away or never existed at all? What happens when society turns a blind eye and simply assumes that the old can handle themselves, when often they can't? Well, the answer isn't just heartbreaking. It's terrifying. The truth is, when an elderly person has no one, the risks compound like a silent avalanche. Physical health declines. The body gets weaker. Muscle mass withers because no one reminds them to move. The fridge slowly empties not just of food, but of intention, because preparing a meal for one becomes a ritual of futility. You'd be amazed how many older adults slowly starve, not from poverty, but from isolation. Then comes the cognitive spiral. Mental faculties begin to fade, not always from dementia or Alzheimer's, but from sheer neglect of mental stimulation. No conversation, no challenges, no purpose. The brain begins to give up, as if it sees no reason to continue the struggle. And then there's the emotional toll. There's no greater form of despair than believing you no longer matter to anyone, that you could vanish tomorrow and the world would barely blink. That's not just sad, it's soul-crushing. We are social creatures. We are wired biologically for connection, for belonging, for purpose. Strip those away and you don't just get an unhappy elderly person, you get a person who's dying in slow motion. Now, you might think, well, that's the way of life. People grow old, people die. It's natural, but I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be this way. The tragedy isn't in aging, it's in abandonment. And worse, in the self-abandonment that often follows. Because when people believe there's no one left to care for them, they begin to stop caring for themselves. And that's when everything falls apart. But here's the good news, and this is crucial. It doesn't have to be this way, not even close. Even if you're elderly and living alone. Even if you feel forgotten. Even if your children don't visit and your friends have passed on. You can still take back control of your life. You can build a fortress of safety, meaning and resilience, even if it feels like you're doing it from scratch. So let's talk about what that looks like. But before we do, I want to remind you, especially if you're watching this and you feel that creeping emptiness, that ache of solitude, your life still matters. It matters immensely. You are not a leftover. You are a chapter in a very important story that is still being written. Now, one of the most crucial first steps to staying safe and strong while aging alone is recognizing the importance of structure. Chaos is the enemy, especially when you're vulnerable. And isolation breeds chaos. Days blur together. Medication schedules are missed. Meals are forgotten. Routines vanish. The body and mind need rhythm, consistent, predictable rhythms. That means setting alarms not just for waking and sleeping, but for moving, eating, and connecting. And when I say connecting, I don't just mean with family. Sometimes family is unavailable. Sometimes family is unavailable. Sometimes they're gone. And that's a devastating reality. But it's not the end of the road. You can still forge new bonds. Start with your neighbors. Yes, knock on doors. Reintroduce yourself. Ask for help when you need it. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Because the alternative, suffering in silence, isn't noble. It's dangerous. Join local community centers, even if you have to drag yourself there. Participate in something, anything that keeps you talking to others. A walking group, a church gathering, a book club. These aren't trivial distractions. They are lifelines. And if you're not naturally extroverted, that's fine. You don't need to be the life of the party. You just need presence and someone to notice if you stop showing up. Another essential pillar of safety while living alone is technology. Now, I know, for some older adults, this is a mountain, but it's one you must climb because technology today is not just convenience, it's survival. A simple medical alert bracelet can save your life. A smartphone app that reminds you to take your pills can prevent a hospitalization. A video call to a friend or a virtual assistant can prevent a descent into despair. You can learn these tools. And if you don't know how, Ask someone to teach you. There are services and programs dedicated to helping seniors become tech literate. You are not too old to learn. In fact, keeping your brain active with new information is one of the best ways to ward off cognitive decline. But perhaps the most powerful strategy of all is something deeper, more spiritual. It's the cultivation of meaning. I've said this many times. Without meaning, suffering becomes unbearable. But with meaning, even great suffering can be endured with dignity. You must find something even now, even in old age, that gives your life direction. Maybe it's writing letters to your grandchildren, even if they never write back. Maybe it's mentoring a younger neighbor. Maybe it's growing a garden and nurturing something alive. These may seem small, but they are acts of defiance against despair, acts of rebellion against invisibility, and they matter deeply. I knew a man once. Let's call him Walter. He was 84, living alone in a crumbling house. No children, no close relatives. But every morning, Walter walked to the local elementary school and stood by the gate. Not in a creepy way. He had volunteered officially to be the crossing guard for the kids. He waved. He smiled. He gave out high fives. For those children, Walter was a fixture of safety and joy. And for Walter, that 30 minutes each morning gave him purpose. It gave him a reason to wake up, to dress, to stand tall. When Walter died, the entire school showed up to his funeral. The principal cried. Kids wrote cards. Walter wasn't forgotten. He was remembered as a guardian. And that's the point. You can still be something important, even if you live alone, even if you feel forgotten. So let me speak to those of you watching this who are not elderly. Maybe you're 35. Maybe you're 22. Let me ask you something. Do you know an older person who lives alone? If so, call them today. Visit them, not as a favor, as a duty. Because we are measured as a society by how we treat our most vulnerable. And the elderly who live alone are among the most vulnerable people walking the earth. Do not let them fade. Do not let them become ghosts before they're gone. And if you are the elderly person in question, if you're watching this right now and you feel that loneliness creeping in, if you've started to believe that your time has passed and no one cares, I want you to hear me clearly. That's a lie. A vicious, corrosive lie. You still have power. You still have agency. You still have time. You can take control of your health. You can build new routines. You can install safety devices. You can ask for help. And you can find purpose, not tomorrow. Today. Because your future is not gone. It is here. And it is waiting for you. Ha! And if you feel too broken, too tired, too hurt, I understand. But let me tell you something I've learned from clinical practice and from life. The people who suffer most often have the most wisdom to share. The deepest pain can give rise to the greatest compassion. But only if you refuse to let that pain turn you bitter or silent. Let it drive you to action. Let it push you to reach out, to stand up, to rebuild, no matter how slowly. Because every small act of courage you take in old age, every appointment kept, every pill taken, every neighbor spoken to, every fear faced is a victory, not just for you, but for the rest of us. Because it reminds us that dignity does not decay with age. It is something you can choose every single day. So if you're still watching, I want you to do something now. Don't just click away and forget this message. Call someone, make a plan, install a safety device, learn a new app, go outside. Tell someone how you're feeling. Do one thing, just one, to reclaim your life. And remember this, being alone does not mean being forgotten. And living alone does not mean dying alone. You still have a voice, you still have a choice. And we, society, need you to make it. Your life is not over. It's just entered a new chapter. Make it one of courage, not surrender. And if this message spoke to you, then share it. Because someone else out there, right now, might be sitting in silence, believing they are the only one. Let them know they're not. You're not alone. You matter. And your story isn't done yet.